I'm with Sarah Karsten now at the University of Western Michigan, and Sarah's going to tell me a bunch of things about aviation, and we're not going to forget one thing. We have an engine out that I want to have her describe to me because it's been described to me by somebody else.
Oh boy.
And I'd like to hear her side of the story. But so Kristen's here. Thanks for coming to see me.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in northern Michigan.
Upper Peninsula?
Lower Peninsula.
Lower Peninsula.
Yep. Rogers City.
Rogers City.
And I grew up on a farm with my family. So,
Any,
lots of work.
Any aviation in there with all
None.
that work?
Nope, absolutely none. I think the thing that probably sparked interest was a National Guard venturing that I used to do. And we would go just play on the obstacle course and kind of goof around. I think I was about 12 when I started. And the A-10s and F-16s would be just ripping by up at the Alpena CRTC base.
Oh.
So, I kind of stood there and it was like, whoa. just watch them go by. And, that'd be kind of cool. So, ever since, just been interested in it.
And that was what age?
Probably around 12 or 13. So, other than that, I guess I would attribute it to too much Top Gun, maybe. Just watched it too many times. I don't want to do that. So.
Yeah, that was kind of a come-on movie, wasn't it?
It was.
Come on, give me some of that.
Yep, pretty much. I mean, I was like, I probably about 3 or 4 the first time I saw it, but.
Yeah, I guess you would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking back at your age now, yeah, I guess it would be. 3 or 4 with Top Gun, 12 years old to see some of the Air Force guys doing their thing in fighters. When did we start our first flight?
Oh, I'd say the first time that I was on an airplane was just like a commuter, probably to, I was about 16 or so, but I kind of stuck with it since then, and I just haven't really looked back. I didn't actually get to take the controls until I came here to Western for my private pilot training, so it was interesting. My instructor was new. It was his first day. I was new, and he said, "So how much experience do you have?" And I said, "None." And that wasn't what he wanted to hear. So, clean slate, definitely, but yeah.
And everything else then is through the syllabus at Western.
Yep. Yeah, it was just kind of a standard lesson with somebody else's student. We hadn't actually flown together before. And student seemed a little fatigued, but I didn't really know if it was just nerves or if it was fatigue. But, we kind of had our brief ahead of time that, we'll basically just go at a slow pace and get through this together. And okay, cool. So we took off, and I think about 60 seconds later, past the beam point for 1-3 in Battle Creek, we started to have some engine roughness. So it's kind of humid out, so I put the carb heat on, and the left engine quit. Okay.
What kind of airplane were we in?
We're in a Piper Seminole.
Oh.
So, that's okay. My controls, mixtures, props, throttle, just like I've been trained to do. Mixtures, props, throttle, full forward, clean it up. And it was really quiet, which is when I realized the right engine isn't going either now, and now we're just falling, basically. So I kind of had that epiphany that the right one was done too right after I declared an emergency. And I'm kind of just going through, I didn't go into feather, obviously, because something else is wrong. So fuel, air, spark, and when I came down to check the fuel selectors, they're both just neatly right in the center in the off position. And I mean, right before we took off, I've been taught, Pat Langworthy here, he did most of my standards, and he just drilled it into you before you take off, you sweep them forward. You always check your fuel selectors on a light twin, especially, So it's like, I just looked at those 60 seconds earlier, how? But, so I scraped them forward, and we're still, gliding as best as you can glide with 2 windmilling props, which not surprisingly isn't very well. So we were pretty much, we didn't really have a road, didn't really have a field, and I wasn't willing to try and turn to get to anything like that. So I pretty much just nosed it over and aimed for the thickest bundle of trees that I could find. And we started our flare. One of my instructors told me that you can pretty much just stall it out right above the treetops, and it keeps the trees from coming in the windscreen, and so on and so forth. So that was the plan at the time. So I'm starting that flare, and we actually had a couple branches kind of coming by the window at that point. And both engines, I mean, I've got everything set full forward, you know, mixtures, props, because they were all, and both engines just went and fired. And we start just climbing out. It's like, and then, I mean, up to that point, you know, the adrenaline was like unlike anything I've ever experienced before, but I was too busy to really get shaken up, you know. On climb out though, rising up out of the trees, it really hit. It was like, whoa, whew, that was close. So we came around and I told them, we're gonna be full stop. And so we landed, and that was pretty much the end of the day, except for a couple meetings and a little explanation as to what had gone wrong. So I know about how long it takes for the float bowl on a carburetor to refill now. So it was a hard way to learn that, but.
So on that airplane, did they have electric fuel pumps?
We do. Yeah, we have a
So
boost
they
pump.
were running all the time. As soon as the valves
Sure.
were switched to the right position, it was a question of.
Right. Yep.
And with the windmilling props, of course, there was enough. As soon as the fuel hit there, the spark was there, it was ready to go.
Yep.
And there was just enough time. If
Yeah.
the
If we would have been about 50 feet lower, 40 feet lower, we would have been in the trees.
Yeah.
So about a second or two earlier, because the student actually switched the fuel selectors off in the downwind, because we sat in the plane together for a while, and just, you know, I said, what happened there?
Yeah,
I'm curious,
right.
you know. And he said, I don't know, I felt like I guess I got stuff really mixed up. He said boost pump on, you know, because I was trying to prompt him to do his before landing checks, because he seemed
Okay.
kind of behind. And I was doing the radios, and they said we had traffic coming in from the east, so they were gonna come in front of us. So I'm looking over here trying to find the traffic.
Mhm.
And he was so fatigued at that point that he confused a couple of things. Those are not boost pumps, and then also the position off and on. And he actually just reached down and moved both of them to the off position.
And that was on the downwind.
That was on the downwind,
Yeah.
about midfield.
And shortly after that, you reduced power to start the descent in for the approach, so you didn't need as much gas at that point.
Right, so we were probably about
Wow.
800 feet by
Yeah.
the time the whole thing got going. So it's a learning experience. So don't mess with fatigue, because the student was seriously fatigued, and it seemed like something was kind of amiss, but you know, I hadn't worked with him before, and I thought, oh, maybe he's just nervous. No, he's tired. So
What would you do if you ran into that situation with a student before you went out and flew today? If you
I don't even mess with it, and
time to go home for a nap?
Yeah, I pretty much tell everybody that right up front. You know, if you haven't rested and you're not capable of helping a situation rather than making it worse, don't come to train, because I don't want any part of it. I've already been there. So.
Good for you. Good lesson to learn. I don't want to rush through this, but I know you have to leave, and so we'll have to do it maybe a longer one some other time. But I'm interested in having you explain to me what your experiences have been with the air race.
Okay.
And first of all, was this the first one this year? Western Michigan University. Entry number 50. This is the airplane of Sara Karsten and Elizabeth Howerton. And they're going to be flying a Cirrus SR-20. And good luck to you women.
It was the first one that myself and my co-pilot have ever done.
Together?
Yeah, well, at all.
Oh, ever?
Really, yeah. We were both learning quite a bit. We haven't had a team since I think about 2008
Oh.
or 2009. So
How did you decide that you were going to, or did the university ask you, or how did that work out that you were there?
I just kind of saw some advertisements hanging around, and I thought, man, that'd be kind of cool, you know, like that almost sounds too good to be true. And, oh, whatever. So I applied for it, and they called me in and said, yeah, we'd like to have you do this.
Awesome.
So just went with it from there.
Is that a good indication of the kind of support you get around here at school?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, work hard, and they keep on giving you opportunities, is what I've found. So
So we could go down that road too. I want to know how you decided to come here and everything. But let's go on a little bit with the air race as long as we have it right now. So I interviewed at Buchanan Field, missed you guys. Sorry about that.
it's okay.
Tell me a little bit about, first of all, the route that you took to get out to Buchanan, because Buchanan's out in Central California.
Yes. We were actually IFR for about half of it, but we stopped, I think our first stop was Iowa City, and from there we just flew the route backwards, essentially. For us, it wasn't really out of the way. We had to go mostly west to get there from Michigan, get to California from Michigan. So we talked about it a little bit ahead of time and decided, you know, it would probably be a nice idea to get familiar with the terrain and with the route that we're going to be taking. I think we spent the night in Elko, Nevada on our way out. And the next morning, you know, we're kind of looking at it, and I said, yeah, we'll just go direct. And I started really looking at the mountains and the restricted areas and the odd duck airspace, and I said, huh. And Elizabeth said, you know, maybe we should just make that last leg up to Klamath Falls, and then we'll come down that way. I said, I think you got something there. So that's what we did. So we flew the entire thing backwards to get out there.
Okay. How many days before were you there, before the start?
I think we got there 2 or 3 days ahead of time. We wanted to make sure that we gave ourselves plenty of time just in case we got weathered out along the way, or you know, something happened. So I'd say about a good 3 days ahead of time.
Then you prepared for it. What kind of, did you have any support from the university for like your weather, for example, or planning hotels or whatever?
Yeah, we actually, since it's been so long, a lot of it, we were kind of digging through the boxes and dusting stuff off, if you will. And I mean, Elizabeth was awesome with just organizing the hotels. We were sponsored by the university. So they, you know, pretty much said, let us know whatever you need and you'll get it. And we said, great, but we didn't always know what we needed, I guess. At some points it was a little overwhelming. But yeah, Elizabeth was just awesome setting up, you know, where we're gonna stay and always making sure that we had that aspect of it figured out. I did the best that I could becoming a weather guru with the stuff out west and kind of just anticipating what's gonna happen here, you know, what are the trends basically. So I just kind of dove into that and studied it for weeks, actually closer to months probably. So we each had our things. We got together and ran some performance numbers a few times and really studied the route in terms of IFR altitudes, even in terms of terrain. One of our program managers, Rob, said, you know, if you're aware of what the climb requirement is out of most of these places for IFR, you're going to have a good safe margin for VFR with regard to density altitudes and things. So we looked at IFR routes, charts, just everything. So
Was you and Elizabeth, were there 3 of you?
just 2 of us.
The 2 of you, okay.
Yep.
Some of the teams had,
Some of the teams had 3
some
people.
of the teams had 3, yeah.
Yep.
So you took off and went to Klamath. That was about the only leg that you were against the wind on the trip, on the race itself, right?
Most of it, yeah, we had a nice tailwind for, except for that first one, which it's kind of hard to beat the westerlies coming off of the Pacific in a
Yeah.
small single-engine aircraft. So we tried to just kind of stick close to the ground, basically, and stay out of the wind portion of it. And then,
What was your handicap speed?
oh boy, 157, I want to say, or 150. It was mid-50s.
Okay, and that's high, right?
It is high. we looked at that and we said, okay, that's going to be a challenge, and it was. We managed to beat it a few times, but you know, we also had a couple legs that were kind of dragging on us. But
Now, how was that figured? Like on your airplane, that had to be figured some way.
we did a handicap flight. So basically, we took a representative who's now president of the ARC up on a little flight. The aircraft has to be clean. You know, you can't show up with mud basically hanging off of it because it's going to create drag. You take everything not essential. If it's not on the equipment list, it doesn't stay in the airplane, basically. So everything gets cleaned out. They take the weight difference between the co-pilot and the handicap pilot, because the handicap, or the co-pilot doesn't come along for the handicap flight.
Oh.
It's just the ARC representative and then the pilot. So you take off, you go to a density altitude of 5,000 feet, get it nice and stabilized, coordinated and everything, leaned for best power, and then if you have a autopilot or flight directing device, you're going to use that. So basically just engage it and fly for 5-minute legs.
5-minute legs.
Yep. So you've got, no matter which way the wind is coming from, because of the fact that you're doing 4 different legs like that, it takes the wind into account as well. And this person will have basically just a GPS unit, and they take that data and then they send it to somebody who uses this math formula that's longer than anything I would care to look at, probably. And then they calculate a handicap speed. And it's a full throttle race. So you do the handicap flight at full throttle, you fly the race at full throttle.
Okay, so anyway, up to Klamath, and then you pass over the point,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the reporting point. And did you stop for gas there, fuel?
We did. Yep.
Stop for fuel there, then off you go eastbound, get
Mhm.
some tailwinds.
We did.
We end up in, Elko that night?
Yeah, it'd be,
Back to Elko.
back to Elko. Everybody loves Elko. We ended up there, and it was getting to the point where we were going to have to either leave so that we could get to Pinedale before sunset,
Pinedale,
Wyoming, or just call it a night. And it looked like everybody else was kind of just settling in, so it kind of seemed like the thing to do. You know, everybody's, you know, people are kind of sitting around looking at weather going, tomorrow, and calling cabs and reserving hotels. And looking at the weather, I'm fairly new to this, but most of the stuff for tomorrow is forecasted to be at about half the height of the mountain peaks, which sounds like a limiting factor to me.
Good thinking.
So the winds were pretty much right at our personal minimums. We set our minimums for the mountain flying at about 20 knots or so because of the turbulence and stuff.
Mhm.
So we were kind of weighing that. We're probably not going to be able to get out of here tomorrow. It's right at our comfort zone right now. And we decided, let's get out of here now. So we left and flew over the Great Salt Lake. We had the ceilings probably a couple thousand feet above us. And just, you know, the Salt Lake is white. It was hazy. It's white up above. The sun is setting. So it was kind of just like this eerie feeling. There's really nowhere to check weather. That was something that was a shell shocker. The nearest weather station is 100 miles away. You know, the nearest airport is 150 miles away. That's like, okay. So that was a little bit stressful. But we got into Pinedale right before sunset, probably about 20 or 30 minutes, and got in.
Pinedale's like straight east of Logan or something up in there?
I'd have to look.
Yeah. you came across the extreme northern part of the Great Salt Lake.
Yep.
Up where almost where the Golden Spike was not hammered in.
Yep.
Yeah, I know that area.
I'm glad that we left Elko though, because a large number of people got stuck there. They woke up the next morning and I heard they had about a quarter-inch of ice on
Mhm.
everything, and the weather just would not let up. So we kind of looked at each other and said, all right. And I mean, looking at the high and low pressures, and I mean just the stuff like that, it's like, it seems like over the next 48 hours, over the U.S., it's going to go from west to east and just settle in with that really
Mhm.
nasty stuff. So instead of a nice strategy of, wait for the best winds, it was pretty much just outrunning weather,
Mm-hmm.
is what it seemed like. And that's what everybody said too. This is the worst race that we've ever seen in
Really?
terms of weather. We're actually talking about having shirts made that say, I flew the 2014 air race. So I'm proud of us because we finished, first timers, and we actually got to make it from start to finish. So
Well, just talking with you the brief time I have, it's pretty obvious that you make wise decisions quickly, and
make a lot of stupid ones quickly
Well,
too. So.
they balance out though, you know.
Yeah, hopefully.
It's 3, Sarah, and
Okay.
I know you have to go.
Alrighty.
So thank you so much for coming in
Yeah.
today. I hope we get a chance. Maybe I'm going to be here all day tomorrow if you have
Okay.
any more time.